Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt on the radio, on podcasts, on Facebook Live, and on YouTube. Today I'm here with Kirk Harrison talking about gun laws and Supreme Court decisions that affect the Second Amendment. And so just a little while ago, if you missed it, I read the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so in this Rahimi case, the law that's infringing on Rahimi's ability to possess a firearm is this law that says somebody subject to a restraining order cannot legally possess a firearm.
Right.
And before the break, you mentioned, well, what if parties to a divorce use this as a way to get back at their former spouse in a retaliatory way? And you brought up, well, what is the standard for getting a restraining order? Well, I'm sure it's different in every state.
Yeah.
But that's the Supreme Court doesn't evaluate whether that's a good standard or a bad standard. It's just if the state proved its case against you and you're subject to the restraining order, you can't possess a firearm during that time. So buried in the Supreme Court opinion, the judges said that Rahimi would eventually be able to possess a firearm again because of the time it expires. And so it's a reasonable regulation because it wasn't a lifetime ban.
Right.
Now, if you've been convicted of even misdemeanor domestic violence, that was a different statute. And so you, as somebody in a relationship, whether it's a man or a woman, this is a reason to not be accused of domestic violence. I mean, do whatever you can to make that other person happy.
Or bow out gracefully.
Oh, yeah. Or if you think that you might be unjustly
it's tough because
accused.
of emotions are involved. And look, the other thing you got to take into account here is the administrative state. I mean, they're doing more now, basically making law than they've ever done before. So it wouldn't be very hard for a state to come in and change the order on restraining orders and what they could be and say, well, this is our angle to get rid of weapons for people. And then just put, the state start filing restraining orders or someone in the state. And then they beef up their restraining order or give it a wider range of coverage. And next thing you know, that's their way to get people from having weapons. And I understand what people are saying, but, all in all, it's tough when it comes to this stuff. And I understand it's bad now because of the fact we have these shootings that are going on, these schools that are going on. Lord knows here in Texas, we had that horrible Robb Elementary. And we had a whole lot of people outside the door that had guns. They didn't have a restraining order, but they didn't go in that school, did they? So it doesn't always work out well. But, I'm not a gun aficionado or anything, probably the other side of the coin. I find them that, being an Army guy, I understand, the use for a weapon and why not to have a weapon. But it is something else to look at these and let the administrative state come in and start adding a lot more restrictions to it so they can go use that as their way to limit the amount of people that can have weapons.
Well, if you're listening and you want to weigh in on whether somebody who's subject to a restraining order should be allowed to possess a firearm, give us a call at 210-308-8867, 210-308-8867, or text Todd at 210 538-4770, 210-538-4770. We're live today, Saturday, July 6th, 2024. We just celebrated Independence Day a couple of days ago, where there was a group of citizens with firearms that changed history.
And the other thing is, people always use that well-regulated militia. They think it's, you can add regulations. Well, if you look at the definition of well-regulated back in the day, that means well-armed, okay, where they have everything they need. In other words, the cap and ball, the ammo, all the things that they need to make their weapons work properly. That is what they call a well-regulated. And a militia, of course, is just a bunch of citizens. That's it. You're a militia sometimes. And they've gotten a pretty bad, rap lately. People saying they're in the militia and this and that. But militias are not always people that are trying to overthrow the government.
Right.
So
yeah, that's an interesting definition of well-regulated. I had not heard that.
Many years ago, I looked that up, and that was one. Okay, there could be other definitions. Okay,
right.
But I just thought that was interesting that in that time frame, So.
Well, because of the Bruin case, which was decided last year, that's the case that changed the standard on how Second Amendment cases would be analyzed.
Right.
Now the court always brings in the history of whether a regulation is going to be reasonable or not. And so in this Rahimi case, the historical laws that they looked at from the 1800s were these laws that were there to protect the spouse that was being abused.
Right.
They didn't have restraining orders per se, but they had this system of bonds and surety, where if you were accused, you would have to put up a bond and say, I promise I'm not going to commit violence. And if the person actually did commit violence, well, then he lost that money.
Right.
And so that was part of why the Supreme Court found this was a reasonable regulation, because it had history behind it.
Yep.
Al, you're live on the air. Thank you for calling. Are you there, Al?
Yes, I am.
Okay, tell us what's your take on this.
Well, I had a question about the bump stock and the automatics. Would this even be an issue if the civilian lives hadn't been taken with these firearms? I mean, we need them for the military, of course, but these people that are using them for mass murders and what have you in the United States, I think that's why there's such an issue about it, because of civilian lives being taken.
Yeah, I think that you're right. It wasn't until the bump stock was used in a mass shooting
Las Vegas,
that the regulators came after it. And so what I've noticed is every time there's a mass shooting, whatever gun was used in that mass shooting
becomes the focus.
Right, that's what the regulators want to go after.
And the other thing out, in my opinion, and I understand what you're saying because of the fact that it improves the rapidity that you can use on firing your weapon. But it comes down to if it's a regular event that happens quite often with bump stocks, I can understand. But a singular event, do we want to make rules and regulations and basically laws based upon a singular event? There's another way to correct that. And sometimes I think we're looking at the wrong thing when it comes to bad people using guns for bad things. We always look at the weapon or the enhancement or something else for the weapon, but there's something missing in this equation, which is the human being that's behind it. Did we have any kind of indicators or anything that could have came out? The same thing with that person that did the Robb Elementary thing. We had a psychologist here telling us that most of the time, those people don't even start posting those manifestos and all until about a couple of weeks before they decide to do it. So what do we do? How can we change this instead of changing the laws? If you want to improve a law, let's change something else. We have to start looking at the human equation.
Well, I think that it's going to go all against us because, and I say, in my opinion, that seems like every politician jumps on this, trying to sway the voters in their favor, right. Just to gain favoritism. But
you're right.
I don't know. It just seems crazy.
Again, it comes down to the person. I think an improvement on mental health, an improvement on parents, helping them learn how to discover maybe little key signs or something where something's really going wrong and take action early on, and including people. I think that's a better equation to look at, a more difficult one, no doubt. But the simple one that the politicians come up with to buy votes, that's just horrible.
Yeah,
really
I think that you're on the right track. We need to let families take care of each other and not rely on the government to solve all of our problems. Thanks for
Al, I'm sure you remember when we used to go to high school, we'd have a gun in our rack and a doggone trucks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
and nobody thought anything about it.
And nobody ever thought of taking one to school. If you'd have been walking towards school with one and somebody saw you, they'd say, "What do you?" And you'd have said, "Oh, I'm doing show and tell." And that's the truth. That actually happens. I mean, man.
And I feel sorry for these police officers because it's not like a person suffering from mental anguish or something can wear a sign around their neck.
You're right.
You're
right. That's the difficult. The human equation is the most difficult. You're correct. Thanks a lot, Al. Appreciate your calling.
Yeah, Al, before you go, let me ask you about the pistol brace. Have you seen one of those guns, a pistol with the brace on it? Because we're going to be talking about that too.
No, I have. I've seen them. I've never seen one up close.
Yeah.
Okay, well, stay tuned. Thank you for the call.
Thanks a lot, Al.
Thank you for taking my call. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, so that's another case that I wanted to talk about was the pistol with the stabilizing device on it, where the ATF had changed the definition of short-barreled rifle to include a pistol with a stabilizing device. And because of another Supreme Court case, I'll have to come up with the name of it in just it's Loper v. Raimondo. That's where the Supreme Court struck down a legal precedent known as the Chevron deference.
Oh yeah, that was a big change.
Which allowed the court to defer to agencies, federal agencies, on what
administrative state that we were just talking
exactly.
about that, how it increased and through the roof it rocketed what the administrative state is doing, basically making their own laws.
Right, and so the Supreme Court says that's not effective anymore, and the court is going to begin to analyze whether these laws are valid or not. And
this comes down to your politicians being lazy. They're too lazy to make an agreement to make laws that guide the administrative state. Instead, they're making these very vague laws that allow the administrative state to improve it and make their own laws. And it's horrendous. That's what you ought to hold them up for, to get that done. Stop the lazy politicians.
We got to take a break.
Good luck.
We'll be right back. We'll be talking about the pistol with stabilizing braces as well as the Texas in-state suppressors. Stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the Ten Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.